We're going to focus quite heavily on what's happening in the Ohio Valley and the lower Missouri Valley with Declan at the bottom of the hour. He's also going to talk about the severe weather, but things are changing so fast here on the Gulf Coast. We're going to talk about it right now, too. The warm front's coming by. Dew points are coming up. They're approaching 70 in New Orleans now, and the atmosphere is certainly very ripe for some severe weather, and there's colder air, drier air punching in very quickly from Waco and the Dallas area. So let's show you the satellite picture and see what's going on here now. You can see these bright, bubbly clouds here. This is some real heavy. The transition from a very cold air mass to quickly a moist and warmer air mass, then back to a cold air mass. We're talking about Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. So a little period of light snow in Philadelphia, then quickly to rain, New York. A little longer duration of snow, then over to rainfall before the rush hour tomorrow. And in Boston, the rush hour may be anything but, as we're looking at some snow. But even here, I think it'll turn over to rain, but you could see 1 to 3 inches right in the city of Boston. Watch the back edge of our rain. Could be some icing in Tennessee and Mississippi. The low settles down, but another low, a big low, is going to form eventually on the Gulf Coast on Wednesday, and more rain and more wind for the northwest. Heavier rains, western seaboard and the lower Mississippi Valley. There are your heaviest snows. The Adirondacks and the greens and whites should all do very well from New York to New Hampshire. Next couple of days, here's the evolution. Colder air, Chicago, you're in the clutches of it now. Florida hangs on to the warm air all the while. Thursday and Friday, there's your colder air waiting on our low to go by in the northeast, and then it sets up for a chilly weekend for sure. Wednesday, developing low in the southeast, coupling with a low coming out of the Gulf. Watch the coast, Washington to Boston, Thursday and Friday. This could be a pretty good-sized snowstorm. Thoughts of the Caribbean here if you see our next 5-day forecast. You're not going to like it, believe me, in Boston nor New York if you're more of a Caribbean type. This is the worst predicament we've been in all winter. This event, then the next one, which could really be a humdinger. Snow falling tonight on the thruway from Albany all the way to Dunkirk, and again the southern part of the thruway turning over to some freezing rain and sleet, then eventually in New York getting over to all rain by the rush hour tomorrow morning. Boston, it will be a lingering problem into the rush hour. Watch the snow in Chicago and St. Louis. It's not a big deal, but it's enough to cause some major headaches. Snows in the Rockies and the Cascades. Watch the severe threat primarily in the lower Mississippi Valley along I-55. Your local I think about 5 inches the entire season, and we're going to do some doubling of that, I think, over the next 4 to 5 days at the very least. Meanwhile, in the west, we're dealing with increasing chances of rainfall, high wind, and the risk of ice tonight in the Portland, Oregon area. Well, more on that with radar coming up. Right now, though, to get the latest on what's happening in the Midwest, including St. Louis and Chicago, here's Declan Cannon.
All right, thanks a lot, Phil. Plenty of snow pushing its way now through central Illinois into northern Indiana. Even in northwest Ohio recently, the snow has picked up in intensity. Let's take you to Kansas City via video. Early this morning, sleet and snow kicking into the area, and the result was, well, some nasty commuting, be it on rail, foot, or car. Things were a little slow today. We had 4 to 9 inches of snow around KC Metro before the snow finally pushed out of town and worked its way south and east. So we've had the snow, and now another brutal reminder that winter's here. Much colder air coming in tonight behind the departing snow. Speaking of departing snow, same story unfolding farther north around Milwaukee down to Waukegan now. The snow pretty much tapering off, not much additional accumulation, but again, just like folks in Kansas City, it's going to get much colder tonight across Wisconsin and into northern Illinois. Heavier snow, as you can see, from the south side of Chicago as you get down to Gary, Indiana, and then stretch it down to just east of Joliet and Kankakee. Reports of moderate to heavy snow. Visibility's dropping down to anywhere between about a quarter to a mile and a quarter with some of that heavier snow as it kicks its way through. Now, as you expand the view on the radar, you can see precipitation. We can go ahead and set this up for you. The snow basically occurring in northwest Ohio, then into central Indiana, and then stretching it all the way down to St. Louis. Cold air, enough supply now around St. Louis so that you've done the transition from cold rain this morning to freezing rain for several hours to sleet and freezing rain for about an hour, and now finally just all snow. There was a burst of heavier snow around St. Louis within the past 2 hours, and that cold air really has done its job kicking in from the north as it heads through Kansas. You'll notice also back to the west here. Here's Kansas City, the snow pretty far south to the east of town now. Joining us on the phone, we have Greg Boland. Greg is with us so that things at least will be a little bit more amenable to traveling perhaps later tonight. But as you heard Greg say, and as we've been talking about here at the Weather Channel, much colder air coming into KC Metro tonight, so it's going to be a little uncomfortable out there. Now look at the radar view out of St. Louis. Snow, a little burst of heavier snow perhaps coming up into the south and west side of town within the next hour. Also, this is that pocket of heavy snow as you head out east of St. Louis up towards Mattoon, Illinois, moderate to heavy snow. And then as we go south and west, the tail end of this snow band as the colder air pushes in now towards southeastern Kansas. Very cold indeed. In fact, it's in the 20s. The current temperatures are in the 20s as far south as northern Texas, and it's the clash of the warm, moist air, the cold air with this cold front that's setting off some big thunderstorms. And we've already had reports of some fairly large hail. 65, that's the dew point temperature showing up at Houston, Texas. Big thunderstorms have...
Look how dramatically different, say, Kansas City is versus Little Rock. 11 and 64 respectively. And that's that contrast, that thermal gradient, that ribbon of temperature differential, if you will. That is where the low is going to form and then race its way up towards Buffalo. And as it does so, it'll do what the predecessors have done, draw the warm air in. It's already getting into Boston and down into New York and Washington. Actually, it's 41 right now in D.C. Boston, that's not the case. It's not getting in there as of yet, but it will. We think around daybreak we'll have some snowfall. It may be a problem for the rush hour, but even here we should see some rainfall. So a real topsy-turvy pattern day to day. Then we get in the cold air later on this week. Some of this bitter cold, ridiculous stuff comes east. It will modify some, but we're going to set up for some major trouble, I think, on the eastern seaboard Thursday and again on Friday. Check out Tampa, offshore flow, beautiful day, 77. For all you lingering revelers, hopefully you're a cheesehead if you are. 73 in New Orleans right now. It's a nice day. It's a little cloudy. It's muggy. There will be a little severe weather later on, too, and we'll continue to track that on the radar. Mid-60s in Phoenix, mid-50s now in San Francisco, 37, still kind of chilly. The air is starting to moisten up, too, in the Portland, Oregon area. And again, with that high where it is, we're getting some easterly cold air draining down from the Columbia River, and that's going to cause some problems. The eastern suburbs, Hillsborough and Gresham may see some problems tonight with freezing rain. Then we have rain on the coast and then increasing cloud cover in the Bay Area. We may see some rain here as early as tomorrow morning. With the upslope, we're getting some snow in Denver. The heart of that heavy snow, though, as Declan mentioned, running from southeastern Kansas into the areas now well east of metro Kansas City and getting into central Illinois, Peoria, down to about Mattoon, really getting clocked with heavy snow. Let's show you the satellite picture of the west. You can see the connection here, the old tropical connection. We continue to see from Hawaii all the way up to Vancouver Island this steady southwesterly push. Now there is a blocking or a buffer of high pressure over California, so the onslaught is going to be a lot farther north this go around, primarily Seattle, Portland.